Hello everyone, this is PD Master Dalton Perrine from chessuniversity.com, and we're doing another video here in the Tactics Time video series today. In this video series, I'm going to be working on solving different tactics trainer positions that are going to be performed here on chess.com. With each position, I'm going to first of all show you the tactic. I'll give you the chance to pause the video so you can work on solving the problem yourself, and then I'll be explaining my thought process and showing the solution to the different puzzles that we do during the video. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and do some tactics here. Hit the start button and see what we get. Okay, so in this position, it is Black's move right now. White has just played the move Queen to D5 check. Go ahead and pause the video and see what you can come up with for Black in this position. Okay, so in this position, after Queen D5 check, obviously our king is under check, so we have to deal with that somehow. The only ways of dealing with it here are either blocking with the bishop on D7. We could also retreat this bishop back to D6 to block the check, or we can move the king away to a couple different squares. I feel like moving the king away doesn't feel correct because it gives White the chance to do whatever he wants to do, especially if we go like King E7. White could actually play something like Bishop G5 check, forking the king and the queen. That would definitely not be very good. If we block with the bishop, also it feels like White gets the chance. Again, if we go Bishop D7, Bishop G5 check is going to fork the king and the queen. So that would not be good once again. If we do Bishop D6, though, this looks like it loses a piece on D6, but when the bishop moves off of the H2 square, we're actually opening up a discovered check on the king on H1. So Bishop D6 check, it's a check for Black against White's king. The king has to move over, and then we can actually deliver the checkmate on H2. So this is kind of like an active defense example. Rather than passively defending with, moving the king or blocking with the bishop on D7, you can instead make your own attack, your own counterattack here. Bishop D6, the king was under check, and then Queen H2 is the checkmate in this position. So it's mainly just about noticing that idea, the fact that we would like, if we weren't in check anyways, we would like to, move the bishop and checkmate White pretty soon. Even though we're in check, we can still do that. We can still play Bishop D6 with a check of our own, and White has to get mated next move. Okay, let's move on to our next position. All right, so White has just made the move Knight takes D3. It's Black's move in this position here. Go ahead and pause the video and see what we can come up with for Black here. Okay, so in this position here, it's Black's move. We're going to continue looking at our 4C moves, of course. I see two different checks that are reasonable. I see B3 check, which is going to pull the king farther up the board. And I see Queen A4 check, which is going to probably push White's king backwards, or maybe he'll have to play the move pawn to B3, attacking our queen. Between these two checks, I tend to like B3 check because I like pulling the opponent's king up the board farther. But you, of course, have to make sure there's a good follow-up. You don't want to just give up the pawn and let White retreat after that and then, not have accomplished much. But if you do B3 check, the nice thing is that once the king takes the pawn, we have a couple of new checks. We have Queen A2 check, we have Queen A4 check. It actually ends up after B3 check, king takes, Queen A4 is going to be checkmate because the rook protects the queen, and we cut off all of the opponent's king's retreat squares there. So pretty straightforward one here, just kind of looking at our forcing moves. B3 check, king takes, Queen A4 is a nice little checkmate in this position. Okay, let's move on to our next position. All right, so in this position here, it is White's move right now. Black has just captured the rook on G5, or G4, I'm sorry, B4, getting my board flipped around. So in this position, it is White's move right now. I believe that White's pawns are going forward. It's a little disorienting when you see a pawn still in the second rank, I believe. But okay, White's pawns are going upwards, and it is White's move in this position. So go ahead and pause the video and see what you can come up with for White here. Okay, so I think in this position, it's definitely going to have to be some pawn pushing ideas, because if not, we are simply down the exchange, and I don't know how well we're doing here. I guess worst case, we could play like king takes a3, and we probably get a draw at the very least. But I feel like getting a draw is probably not what the tactic is looking for. So we're probably going to be pushing the pawn up to e2. I'm sorry, d7. Again, I'm getting the sides flipped around here. Probably pushing the pawn up to d7. That opens up a discovered attack on the rook and also looks to promote the pawn to the queen next move. Now, how can black defend against that? Black can play rook b8, protecting it, and black can play rook d4, protecting from behind. If black goes rook b8, we actually have the move bishop d6 check, forking the king and the rook. So rook b8 doesn't work. And if the rook goes to d4, it looks like we can't do anything now that the rook is behind the pawn. But we could actually play pawn to e3 with a check at that point. So I probably should have mentioned at the start, e3 check is one of our forcing moves we should look at. e3 check, bishop h6 check, different things like that. But once we do d7, rook d4, e3 check, the king takes, we've pulled the king into a diagonal lineup with the rook, and then we can play bishop to c5, pinning the rook, and then our d-pawn is going to be able to advance after we take the rook. So a little bit complicated, a little bit convoluted here, especially a little bit disorienting when I keep thinking that white's pawns are going downwards. But in this case, it looks like we can go d7, rook to d4. Now, this is where we would like to kick the rook away from attacking the pawn, but if we simply play bishop c5 right now, black will just take the pawn. So what we're going to do first is e3 check. The king takes. We've now pulled the king into this pin. When the king has to move, the rook couldn't take the pawn because it was pinned. We're going to take the rook, and next move we're going to promote the pawn there. So nice little in-game tactic here based on pawn promotion. We got to find a way to advance, then we got to find a way to get rid of the guy that's defending against our promotion. And in this case, we get rid of the rook, and we we pulled the king into a pin, get rid of the rook, and we're going to promote the pawn next move. Okay, so nice little in-game tactic here, as well as a couple of other tactics in the previous two positions. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the different tactics we've looked at here. I hope to see you guys around in a future video for chessuniversity.com, and I hope everybody has a good day.